Welcome to the Fame Files, episode 28. Buckle up, folks, because things are getting real tense in the world of television, like seriously tense. We're talking of a situation that could change how you watch your favorite shows.
Definitely. This is a high-stakes battle going on behind the scenes, and the viewers are the ones who could end up paying the price.
So picture this. Paramount Global, the massive company behind channels like, well, CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, BT, all the big ones, right? They're in a major standoff with YouTube TV, which, if you don't know, is one of the biggest players in live TV streaming. And get this, if these two don't make a deal, millions of viewers could lose access to those channels. Like, poof, gone.
And this isn't just about some contract squabble. It's all happening at a really crucial time for both of these companies. Paramount's in the middle of this huge restructuring, trying to figure out how to survive in this world where everyone's ditching cable and going for streaming.
Right, they're kind of like a dinosaur trying to adapt to, like an asteroid hitting or something.
Pretty much. And then you've got YouTube TV, which is facing more competition than ever before. They're trying to keep costs down, but everyone wants a piece of the streaming pie these days.
And to make matters worse, this whole fight could impact a major sporting event, March Madness. I mean, CBS shows a lot of the games, and if things don't get settled, YouTube TV subscribers might miss out on all the action.
Yeah, the timing of this whole thing is just brutal for sports fans. Imagine the Final Four, the national championship, all gone because of a contract dispute.
So let's break this whole thing down. First off, can you give us a little background on who these players are, especially for anyone who might not be super familiar with all the ins and outs of the media world? Like, what exactly is Paramount Global? What makes them so important?
Sure. So Paramount Global, they're basically a giant in the media world. They own a ton of content and a bunch of iconic channels. I'm talking CBS, which is, America's most watched network, Nickelodeon with all those shows kids love, MTV, Comedy Central, BT, you name it. Even the Paramount Network, which is home to that super popular show, Yellowstone.
Oh yeah, Yellowstone. That show is everywhere these days. I hear people talking about it all the time. They've definitely got some heavy hitters in their lineup.
They do. And then on the other side, you have YouTube TV. They're one of the leading internet TV services in the U.S. Over 8 million subscribers. That's a lot of people. And they're especially popular with sports fans, particularly because they just got the rights to NFL Sunday Ticket.
Wow, 8 million.
Okay.
So they're not messing around. Okay, so we have Paramount, this old school media giant with a ton of content, and then YouTube TV, this streaming powerhouse catering to a whole new generation of viewers. But what are they actually fighting about? Like, what's the root of all this drama?
It all comes down to money, as it so often does. Basically, their contract is up for renewal, and Paramount wants YouTube TV to pay a lot more for their channels. They're saying, hey, our content is valuable, people love it, so you got to pay up.
But YouTube TV's like, hold on, we can't just jack up prices for our subscribers. We have to keep things affordable.
Exactly. And they just raised their prices recently, so they're probably feeling the pressure from their subscribers already.
Yeah, nobody likes a price hike.
Okay.
Okay, so it's basically a standoff. Both sides want something different, and neither of them wants to budge. What does this actually mean for the average person who subscribes to YouTube TV? Like, if they don't make a deal, what channels are going to disappear?
Well, we're talking about a pretty long list here. All the big ones we've mentioned, of course, CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, BAT. But then there's also CBS Sports Network, the Paramount Network, CMT, Nick Jr., Smithsonian Channel, TV Land, VH1, and that's not even all of them.
Wow, that is a lot of channels. So basically, it's like someone's about to flip the switch and turn off a whole chunk of your TV lineup.
Pretty much. And here's another kick in the pants. If this happens, you'll lose access to your local CBS station too. That means no local news, no local programming.
Ouch. Yeah, that's going to hurt. And hold on, this might sound like a silly question, but what happens to all those shows you've already recorded on your DVR? Like, if they're from one of those channels that gets blacked out, are they just gone?
You guessed it, those recordings go poof too.
Okay, so it's not just about losing line access. You're losing all that content you saved too. That's pretty rough.
It is. And to add another wrinkle to this whole mess, Paramount Plus and Bet Plus AE which were offered as add-ons through YouTube TV, those would be pulled as well.
So even if you're willing to pay extra for those streaming services, you wouldn't be able to get them through YouTube TV anymore.
Nope. You'd have to go directly to Paramount or be fed to subscribe.
Wow, this is getting complicated. So many moving parts. It feels like both companies have a lot to lose here, and so do the viewers. But you mentioned earlier that there's one group that could be hit especially hard by this whole standoff. Who are we talking about?
We're We're talking about sports fans.
Ah, right. Because of March Madness.
Exactly. Think about it. March Madness is just around the corner, and CBS is the main broadcaster for a lot of the games, including some of the biggest ones, the Final Four, the championship game.
And if YouTube TV and Paramount don't make a deal.
Well, a lot of those YouTube TV subscribers are going to be scrambling to find a way to watch those games.
Yeah, I can imagine that would cause quite an uproar. Nobody wants to miss out on March Madness.
Exactly. And it's not just March Madness. CBS also shows other big sporting events, like the Masters Golf Tournament. They have a whole lineup of sports programming that people rely on them for.
Okay, so we've got these two media giants locked in this battle, potentially depriving millions of people of their favorite channels, and March Madness hanging in the balance. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But if we zoom out a bit, if we look at the bigger picture, this whole thing is actually a symptom of some really significant changes happening in the media landscape. Changes that are affecting all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's this bigger picture you're talking about?
Well, this isn't just some isolated incident. It reflects a major shift in how we all consume entertainment these days. You have these traditional media companies like Paramount who are struggling because cable is dying. People are cutting the cord left and right and going for streaming services instead.
So they're feeling the pressure to adapt, right? To figure out how to survive in this new world.
Exactly. They need to find new ways to make money, new ways to stay relevant. And then on the other side, you have the streaming services like YouTube TV who are facing more and more competition all the time. They're trying to keep costs down for their subscribers, but they also have to pay the content providers like Paramount for their channels. It's a tough balancing act.
And it seems like the rising cost of content is a big part of the problem. Everyone's feeling the pinch.
You got it. It's a chain reaction. As the cost of content goes up, the streaming services have to charge more, and then the subscribers start to feel like, hey, wait a minute, this is getting expensive.
So where do we go from here? I mean, will Paramount and YouTube TV actually come to an agreement? Will viewers actually lose their favorite channels? Will March Madness be blacked out for millions of fans?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd tell you. The truth is, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. They could reach a deal at any moment, or this whole thing could drag on for weeks, maybe even months. We've seen these kinds of disputes before, like the one between Disney and YouTube TV back in 2021.
Right, I remember that one. It was a big deal.
It was. And thankfully, they managed to resolve it fairly quickly. But there's no guarantee that this one will follow the same path.
So fingers crossed for a quick resolution. But in the meantime, what are YouTube TV subscribers supposed to do? Like, if they're worried about losing access to all those channels, what are their options?
The most important thing is to stay informed. Keep an eye on the news, check the websites and social media for both YouTube TV and Paramount, and definitely read any emails they send out. You want to get your information straight from the source and avoid all the rumors and speculation flying around.
Good advice. Stay informed. And didn't YouTube TV offer subscribers like an $8 credit if this blackout lasts for a while?
They did, yeah. Kind of ironic, though, isn't it? That $8 credit is the same price as a month of Paramount Plus Dale.
Huh. Yeah, that's kind of funny when you think about it. Like, oh, we might take away your access to all these channels, but hey, here's a discount on our streaming service where you can watch some of the same stuff.
Right. A little bit of a mixed message there. But the thing is, even if you do subscribe to Paramount Plus Day, you're still not getting everything. Like CBS Sports Network, which is a big deal for sports fans, that's not on Paramount Plus Day. So the $8 credit doesn't really solve the problem for those viewers.
Yeah, it's a tough situation all around. This whole thing really makes you think about how you watch TV these days. Like, where do you get most of your content? Are you feeling the pressure from all these rising streaming costs?
I think this dispute between Paramount and YouTube TV is a wake-up call for a lot of us. The streaming world is changing fast, and it's not always for the better. As viewers, we're kind of caught in the middle of this power struggle between the content creators and the distributors, and it's not clear how it's all going to shake out in the end. It really shows you the challenges these traditional media companies are up against these days. Like, Paramount's going through a major restructuring right now, trying to figure out how to stay afloat.
Yeah, no kidding. It seems like they've been taking some hits lately. Didn't they just write down the value of their cable networks by, like, billions of dollars?
They did, and there were layoffs last year, too.
Right. I remember reading about that. And didn't they try to merge with Skydance Media at some point?
They did, but that seems to have fallen apart. Yeah, they're definitely trying to find their footing, but it's not easy for these big companies to change direction so quickly. It's like trying to turn a cruise ship on a dime.
Exactly. And meanwhile, you have YouTube TV, which is doing pretty well in terms of growing your subscriber base, but they're facing competition from all sides,
Mm-hmm.
especially from those, what do you call them, skinny bundles?
Right, the skinny bundles.
Yeah, the ones that are specifically targeting sports fans.
Exactly. That's a really interesting trend, actually. These skinny bundles, they offer a smaller selection of channels, usually focused on specific things like sports or news, and they're typically priced lower than those bigger packages that have everything. It's like they're responding directly to what a lot of consumers are asking for, which is more flexibility, more control over what they're paying for.
Right, so you're not stuck with a bunch of channels you never watch. I
Right.
get it. So YouTube TV is trying to build this reputation for having a good streaming experience. They have unlimited DVR, multiple devices you can watch on, all that stuff. But didn't they also raise their prices not too long ago? I feel like I remember hearing about that.
You're right, they did. There was some backlash from subscribers, of course. Nobody likes to see their bill go up.
Especially when it seems like everything's getting more expensive these days.
Exactly. Some people felt like YouTube TV was nickel and diming them, especially because that price increase came along with them removing some channels from their lineup. It's a tough spot for them. They're trying to keep their subscribers happy while also dealing with these content providers who are demanding more money.
Yeah, they're caught in the middle. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here.
Uh,
What are the main things that Paramount and YouTube TV are disagreeing about? What's preventing them from making a deal?
Well, when you strip it all away, it really comes down to money. Paramount wants YouTube TV to pay them more per subscriber for their channels. They're arguing that their content is worth a premium, that it's popular, and that it adds a lot of value to YouTube TV's overall package.
But YouTube TV is pushing back, right?
Mm.
They're probably saying that Paramount's demands are just too high, that they'd have to raise prices even more for their subscribers if they agree to those terms.
Exactly. And they can point to that recent price hike as evidence that they're already pushing the limits of what their subscribers are willing to pay. It's classic negotiation. Both sides are trying to use whatever leverage they have to get the best possible outcome for themselves.
So it's like a game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? And the clock is ticking too, especially with March Madness coming up so soon. Can you imagine the outrage if YouTube TV subscribers suddenly can't watch those games?
Oh, the backlash would be intense. March Madness is huge. People plan their lives around it. They fill out their brackets. They get super invested in those games. To have it suddenly taken away because of a contract dispute, that would be a PR disaster for both companies.
You mentioned earlier that these kinds of disputes often get resolved at the 11th hour. Is there any hope that this one will follow that pattern?
There's always hope. I mean, neither company wants to lose subscribers, and neither of them wants to lose money. So there's a strong incentive for them to find some kind of compromise. And these are two sophisticated businesses we're talking about. They have teams of negotiators who are experts at this kind of thing, at hammering out deals.
Okay, so let's say you're a YouTube TV subscriber and you're freaking out right now because you're worried about losing access to all your favorite Paramount channels, especially with March Madness coming up. What can you do? What are your options?
Well, first and foremost, don't panic. The most important thing is to stay informed. Keep an eye on the news, check those websites and social media accounts, and be sure to read any emails they send out. You want to make sure you have the latest information so you can make good decisions about your viewing options.
Makes sense. Don't rely on rumors or hearsay. Go straight to the source.
Exactly. Now, if you're really worried about missing specific shows or sporting events, you might want to think about some other ways to access those channels, at least temporarily.
Like what? Dust off the old antenna and try to get those channels over the air?
Hey, if you're in an area with good reception, that could work for local channels. Or you could think about signing up for Paramount Plus directly.
Paramount plus Bark. Okay, tell me more about that option.
So Paramount Plus has a lot of the same content you'd find on those cable channels, including live CBS programming in a lot of markets. And they have a huge library of shows and movies you can watch on demand.
That sounds tempting, but isn't that just another monthly fee on top of what you're already paying for YouTube TV? And doesn't that still leave sports fans who want CBS Sports Network out in the cold?
You're right, it's not a perfect solution, and it definitely adds to the overall cost.
So maybe the best thing to do for now is just wait and see what happens. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
I think that's a reasonable approach. Keep your fingers crossed that these companies can work things out.
I think we're all hoping for that.
Boy.
This whole situation is a good reminder that the world of television is in flux, and we need to be ready to adapt.
Absolutely. This fight between Paramount and YouTube TV is just a taste of what's to come as the streaming landscape continues to evolve.
Speaking of the future of television, I'm curious to get your take on where all of this is headed. Do you think we're moving towards a world where we all have, like, a dozen different streaming subscriptions?
It's definitely a possibility. And while having all those options might sound great in theory, it can get pretty overwhelming and expensive pretty fast. It's not realistic for everyone to have 10 or 15 different streaming subscriptions.
So what's the alternative? What would a more sustainable model look like?
That's the million-dollar question. One possibility is that we'll see more bundling of services, where you can get a package deal for a bunch of streaming platforms at a discounted price. Right. Kind of like those old cable bundles, but for streaming.
Interesting. So it would be like the cable bundles of old, but with a more modern twist.
Exactly. It would simplify things for consumers and maybe save them some money.
And maybe it would make things a little less chaotic for the industry, too.
Right. Another possibility is that we'll see these new platforms emerge that bring together content from multiple providers. Imagine a service where you can access shows and movies from Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max, all of them, all in one place.
Whoa, that would be a game changer. The ultimate streaming hub. But is that even possible? Would these companies, who are basically competitors, ever be willing to work together like that?
It would definitely require a big shift in the industry and a lot of cooperation between companies that are currently fighting tooth and nail for market share. But hey, stranger things have happened, and if consumers demand it strongly enough, the market might just find a way to deliver.
It's wild to think about the possibilities, but for now, it feels like we're still in the wild west of streaming. We're all just trying to figure things out as we go along.
Absolutely. And it's important for viewers to understand what's going on behind the scenes, these power struggles that are shaping the industry. Because at the end of the day, it's the viewers who hold the power. We decide what we watch, how we watch it, and how much we're willing to pay for it.
That's a good point. So, what can viewers do to make their voices heard? How can they influence the direction of the streaming industry?
Well, for starters, speak up. If you're not happy with a particular service or if you don't like the way the industry is going, let those companies know. Use social media, write reviews, contact customer support, get the word out.
Don't just sit there and complain. Do something about it.
Exactly. Another thing you can do is be a more conscious consumer. Think about which services you're subscribing to and why. Don't be afraid to cancel a service if it's not meeting your needs or if you think the price is too high. Vote with your wallet, as they say.
Support the services that you believe in, the ones that align with your values and your viewing preferences.
Exactly. And be open to trying new things. The streaming landscape is constantly changing, with new services popping up all the time. Don't be afraid to explore and see what else is out there.
It's like a giant buffet of entertainment options. Sample a little bit of everything and see what you like.
A great analogy. But just like with a buffet, it's easy to get carried away and end up feeling overstuffed and kind of gross. Choose wisely and savor the experience.
Good advice. As we wrap up this part of the discussion, I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on this Paramount and YouTube TV standoff. What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the situation highlights the fact that we're in the middle of a massive transition in the entertainment industry. The old ways of doing things are changing, and the lines between traditional television and streaming are becoming increasingly blurred.
It's like a seismic shift with all these power dynamics in constant motion.
Exactly. And as viewers, we're caught in the crossfire. But that doesn't mean we're powerless. We have a voice, and we can influence how this all plays out.
So stay informed, be vocal, and be a conscious consumer.
You got it. And remember, at the end of the day, entertainment is supposed to be enjoyable. Don't let the complexities of the industry take away from the pleasure of watching your favorite shows and movies.
Well said. That brings us to the end of part 2 of our show. It feels like we're on the edge of this whole new world of television, and I don't know about you, but it's kind of intimidating.
Yeah, it's definitely a wild time to be a viewer. I mean, think about it. We went from having just a few broadcast networks to like hundreds of cable channels, and now we have this insane number of streaming services. It's hard to keep track of it all.
I know, right? It's like information overload. And I remember when having cable was considered a luxury. Now it seems like everyone's cutting the cord and going for streaming, but the costs are starting to really add up.
That's such a good point. Streaming was supposed to be all about more choices and lower costs, but it's getting more and more complicated. We're basically just trading one set of limitations for another.
Exactly. We cut the cable to save money, and now we're juggling all these different subscriptions. It's not even clear if it's actually cheaper anymore.
It makes you wonder if this whole fragmented system, with everyone having their own separate streaming service, if it's even sustainable in the long run. Can people really afford to keep subscribing to all these different services? And can the companies that make the shows and movies, can they actually make enough money to keep creating new content?
It's a tough question. It feels like something has to change eventually. Do you think we'll start to see some consolidation, like maybe some of these streaming services will merge together or start offering bundles?
It's definitely possible. We're already starting to see some of that happening, like Warner Bros. Discovery combined HBO Max and Discovery Plus into one service. And I've heard rumors that there might be more mergers and acquisitions in the works.
Well, that makes sense from a business perspective.
Yeah.
But what about from the viewer's point of view? Would we lose something if we ended up with fewer but bigger streaming services?
That's a really good question. One of the potential downsides of consolidation is that we might end up with less variety in programming. If a few giant corporations control most of the content, they might focus more on making shows and movies that appeal to the widest possible audience, and that could mean less support for niche interests or independent creators.
Yeah, it would be a shame to lose that diversity. We don't want to end up with a situation where everything starts to look and feel the same.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. We want a system that's financially stable for the people who create the content, but we also want a system that gives viewers a wide range of choices. Finding that sweet spot is tricky.
It really feels like we're all part of this big experiment trying to figure out what the future of television is going to look like. And this whole fight between Paramount and YouTube TV, it's just one small piece of that puzzle.
Definitely. It's like a little window into the bigger forces that are shaping the industry. And while it's definitely frustrating for the viewers who are caught in the middle of it, it's also a sign that things are changing, that the industry is trying to adapt to this new reality.
So what's the bottom line for our listeners?
Mhm.
What should they keep in mind as they try to navigate this crazy world of entertainment?
I think the most important thing is to be informed and to be proactive. Do your research, figure out what your options are, and choose the services that make the most sense for you and your budget.
And don't be afraid to make changes if something's not working for you.
Yeah.
There are plenty of choices out there.
Exactly. And remember, you have a voice. If you're not happy with the service, let them know. Give them feedback. Contact customer support. Talk about it on social media. These companies do pay attention to what their customers are saying.
Right. Don't just suffer in silence. Speak up.
Exactly. And be patient. This is still a relatively young industry, and it's going to take some time for things to settle down. We're all figuring this out as we go.
Well said. I think that's a great point to end on. Thanks so much for joining me today and for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. I always enjoy talking about the future of entertainment. It's a fascinating topic.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in to the Fame Files. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media for all the latest updates and insights on the world of fame and fortune. We'll see you next time.